A profitable morning to you this morning. Welcome to Business Morning. 55 minutes of current and relevant conversations. That's what we do here. I'm Ini John McWell. Let's start from the global space. As usual, we see that oil prices climbed this morning in early trade, boosted by new tariff exemptions floated by President Donald Trump and a rebound in China crude oil imports in anticipation of tighter Iranian supply. So we see green is the color for this morning. 27 cents added to Brent. That brings it up to $65.15 a barrel. WTI also up 0.4%. $61.79 a barrel. And so we see in the latest development in Trump's whipsawing trade war, that's what is being called, he has said that he was considering a modification to the 25% tariffs imposed on foreign auto and auto parts imports from Mexico, Canada, and other places. The vacillation U.S. trade policies have created uncertainty for global oil market and pushed OPEC on Monday to lower its demand outlook for the first time since December last year. The Trump administration had announced that it would grant exclusions from tariffs on smartphones, computers, and some other electronic goods, most of which are imported from China, and that drove both oil benchmarks to settle up slightly higher. But we know that he has now hinted of an exemption of that tariff for products that are made in China. Talking about the tax, that was the latest that we had yesterday. And yes, OPEC has reduced its forecast because of the tariffs, and despite declining the country's output in March, Nigeria retained its position as the largest crude oil producer in Africa, surpassing Algeria and Congo. And this is according to the latest report from the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. In its latest monthly reports released, the oil cartel says Nigeria's oil output decreased to 1.4 million barrels per day last month from 1.46 in February. Meanwhile, the body has reviewed its 2025 global oil demand forecast downward, projecting a lower growth of 1.3 million barrels per day this year. That's down from earlier estimate of 1.4 million. And the trade tariffs are at the top of it, dropping oil prices and plant output increases by OPEC nations. Away from the oil space, Nigeria has officially signed and transmitted the ECOWAS schedule of tariff offers for trading goods under the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AfCFTA. It's been sent to the Secretariat. The gazetted schedule sets the foundation for implementing zero duties on 90% of tariff lines under AfCFTA, effectively positioning Nigerian goods for improved access and competitiveness across the African market. The move, which comes ahead of the 16th Council of Ministers meeting on trade scheduled for April 15th in Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo, marks a significant milestone in the country's trade integration efforts within the continent. Although Nigeria made its first shipment under the AfCFTA framework in July last year, the formal gazetting of the ECOWAS tariff schedule signals a new phase of accelerated trade integration. The 65th anniversary of the Nigerian-American Chamber of Commerce, which was held in Lagos, was a platform to review the relationship of both countries and benefits over the years, but also assessing today's realities and potentials for the continent. The chairman of the occasion, who is the president of the Africa Finance Corporation, Mr. Samaila Zubairu, captured this in his speech with the theme, "The Power of Cooperation, 65 Years of Optimizing Nigerian-American Economic Relations." For him, a priority area for the continent is energy.
Let's put our hands together for him. Africa has 240 gigawatts of hydro capacity. We have some people driving that here in the room. Mainstream is one of the largest hydropower producers in the continent, and they're here, and there's a lot more that can be done. We also have about 14 gigawatts of geothermal capacity on the continent, and we're seeing how we can improve that. More importantly, we have 400 gigawatts of gas capacity on the continent. one of the largest gas fields in the world is actually offshore Nigeria, with about 17 TCF of gas on just one block. And we can see how developing that is important not just for Nigeria, but important for Africa. One of the things I tell people that I'm glad with the presidency of Trump is, the whole idea about energy expansion and not energy transition. I always argue that in Africa, we have 5,000 billion cubic meters of natural gas, which we have to develop. We can't have stranded assets when we don't have access to energy.
And energy is part of our conversation this morning as we head to the commodity space with Mr. Bismarck Rewane, the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company. Mr. Rewane, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Inia. Thank you for having me this morning.
Good. So we saw oil production decline, even though we're still leading on the continent, but we lost about 600,000 barrels per day in the last month. It shouldn't come as a surprise. We've seen a lot of disruptions in the Niger Delta areas where crude production should take place. And incidentally, this happens in the period where we see a drop in the price of oil. I must say, the revenue of the country has been harmed already.
Thank you, Ini. Actually, the decline is 60,000 barrels, not 600,000 barrels. With 600,000 barrels decline, we would have been out of business altogether. We'd be underwater. So 60,000 barrels, and but that is interesting because we are now the leading OPEC producer in Africa. But don't forget, Angola is no longer a member of OPEC, if my facts are correct. Therefore, we are ahead of Congo and Algeria. But that's fine. The reality is that we are in a global situation where the exception has become the rule. In other words, everybody's devices, computers, handsets, and all have been exempted. The president of the United States changes his mind, and he calls it flexibility. So there's no problem with that. But what it does tell you is that you have to plan on a scenario-based approach. In other words, if today this is exempted, then you plan for that. If something is not exempted, but the point is that when the unknown unknowns, like we always say, are more than the known unknowns, then the uncertainty increases. If the uncertainty increases, then the probability that you could have a recession also increases, and that itself weighs down on investment and people making final investment decisions because they do not know what is going to happen and when people's minds are going to be changed. But having said that, if we go back to what the discussion we had last week on this program, I said that there will be a change of mind. I said that many of the things that were going down will be going up, and in the long term, right? You know that generally speaking, if you do nothing in over a 5-year period, you get the same return as if you did something. So there are times there's a benefit in being patient, and there's also the benefit in being active. So that's what we are seeing right now. So for Nigeria, I don't worry too much at $65 a barrel and producing at 1.4 million barrels, including condensates. That gives us enough room if we can use our resources efficiently and transparently. That is what's going to happen. That's going to lift us past the finish line.
Well, I'm glad you said use our resources transparently, Mr. Rewane. And thank you so much for that correction, 60,000 barrels and not 600,000, the difference between February and March production.
Yes.
But you say we may not have a lot to worry, but when we look at the numbers, we see 65 instead of 75. That's our
Yes.
target. I know that, was it last week or so, there was a conversation around with the minister hinting that they will be having conversation. Perhaps they have to take another look at some of those indices in the budget. That must
Yes.
mean that this $10 difference is something. This drop in the Naira is something. in the budget it's 1,500. Now we've been seeing 1,006 for over a week now. These
Yes.
must mean something to our plan for the year.
No, definitely, Ini, you're right. I think the viewers must know two things. One is that the price is one parameter. That is, the benchmark price is $75, and the going price is $65. You're underwater to the extent of almost 15%. One. Two, the production in the budget was 2 million barrels. You are at 1.4 million barrels. Right? So immediately it's 600 over two, so you know immediately that you're almost 20% below. So when you add it, revenue is price and volume. So both on the volume side you're down, on the price side you're down. So this is a challenge. What happens in such circumstances? Normally you either cut back your expenditure, or you put forward a supplementary budget to Parliament to increase your borrowings to meet your objectives. So these are tough times. But on the good side is that at $65 a barrel, now we're selling petrol at 92 naira per 920 naira per liter, and diesel at 1,050. And that was based on maybe $70 a barrel. Now we might begin to see, if all other things are equal, that we might see a reduction in the price of petrol because of that and logistics costs within Nigeria. But that's not enough. What Nigeria needs also is to optimize its revenue, use it efficiently, and like I said earlier, transparently, and also be consistent to endear yourself to investors who will bring money in, not foreign portfolio investors, but foreign direct investors, Nigerian investors, rather than investing outside, investing domestically, and therefore you would enjoy the investment multiplier effect on income and the linkages between the businesses that are investing and the small and medium scale enterprises. So that way it becomes win-win. But it's a very hard road to travel, like we always say. It's a hard road to travel and a long time to wait.
And you talk about cutting expenses, which has been a conversation for a long time, but it doesn't seem like we see, or perhaps you've seen some efforts by this administration to cut down on expenses, cost of governance. People are saying how ministries should be cut down, but we've seen new ministries actually pop up. We've seen new appointments and all of that. And of course, the government or government representatives will tell you these are necessary steps to get the job done. So where else can we talk about cutting expenses or closing these leakages?
Let me take the expenses in order of priority. Number one, our largest expense is debt service, and we know that interest rates have increased. So to that extent, debt service is really hurting us. Number two is other incidentals and miscellaneous expenses. We have a lot of people in Paris having this summit right now. I'm not so sure what this summit is going to bring in terms of revenues and in terms of investments and all that. In fact, in Nigeria today, there's what we call a summit fatigue and conference fatigue. People just go for conferences and everywhere, every state is holding a summit, every state is having a conference. But if you try to correlate the amount of money spent on conferences and these soft costs and what the value we get, it will show you something that's quite alarming. Therefore, we need to be very deliberate about what we are spending on and what the value we get in return. There is too much waste and there's too much inefficiency and there's also too much opacity, right? So if those things happen, and we've said it so many times, so there's no, we are over-laboring the issue. The point is that what are we going to do about it? The president did announce cutting the number of people, delegates that go on to go to conferences. The president did announce the cutback and the relaunch of the Oronsaye report. The president did announce that it's going to be driving it's going to be pushing for an increase in revenue and optimizing of the revenues. But those were nice announcements. What we need to now is to ask the questions: what has happened ever since? How many people are in Paris for this conference? And how many of them are paid for by the government of Nigeria, both state and federal? how many people are in the city of London doing all of these things? It doesn't matter whether it is expensed or whether it is subsidized by private sources. Those things do not bring about increased productivity. And if there's no output increase, inflation begins to increase. And if inflation increases, growth begins to get retarded. And so these are the inconvenient truths, but we must tell ourselves the truth. If we are not willing to tell ourselves the truth, then, like we say, only the truth can set the people free, and we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to differentiate between analysis and propaganda, and we have to have the facts correctly so that we can make accurate decisions. But having said that, I'd like to take you on some other things that have happened. One is that inflation numbers are going to come out this morning or sometime this afternoon. From all the indications, inflation is going to slow to about 23.18%, if I'm right. So we think that is what's going to happen. The discussion is going to be: is this trend going to continue? Yes, we think the trend will continue, but it may actually inflect, in the sense that if you look at the breakdown, we expect that monthly inflation and core inflation is going to increase. And if that happens, it means that we are in for some turbulence in terms of inflation for the next 1 or 2 months. But after June or July, when the external turbulence in the global markets reduces, and there's more certainty as to what the direction of the variables are, we think that Nigeria will see a trend of lower inflation towards the end of the year. But right now, inflation is trending downwards, but it's going to pick up again. If you look at the price of the goods that we see in the markets, you'll see that beans has come down by about 5% to 85,000. You see that vegetable oil has come down by another 2.6% to 19,000 naira. The price of flour, strangely enough, has increased by 8.3% to 65,000 naira. And Gary is also up from what I see here. The sugar price has come down by 1.23% to 80,000, and onions is up by 33% to 120,000. Pepper begins to defy all logic and gravity. Pepper is up because of the pepper disease to 230,000 naira a bag. So for those of you who depend on chili and chili sauce and spicy food, you have a challenge ahead of you. That's what we are seeing right now.
Yeah, Mr. Rewane, I think you were just talking to me there. Actually, I don't understand why, even when tomatoes, we see a decline in price, when it comes to peppers, it's still high up there. Maybe we have gotten too many members of the chili club, so the demand is too high.
The thing about chili, though, there's dry pepper, there's atarodo, there's all the other variants. But if you dry the pepper, you are not going to be able to dry tomatoes. Tomatoes is paste and puree and all of that. But for pepper, they come in different variants. But I think there's a disease on it. It just shows you that the storage of pepper has been quite difficult. But and Nigerians are quite chilly. They like chili sauce, and they like their paste hot. But one point I want to make for you to viewers is that the dollar in the past month or two, against a basket of currencies, the dollar has lost almost 9 to 10%. So if we are at 1,600 to the dollar, we have lost about almost 5%. It means against all other currencies, we have lost almost 14 or 15%. That's the naira. Is it a good thing? It's not a bad thing, because the Chinese have also dropped the value of the currency. So competitive devaluation helps you make your exports more efficient and more competitive.
Yeah, but Mr. Rewane,
if you have nothing to export,
exactly. Yeah, because in the case of the yen, it was done intentionally,
yes,
to reduce the costs of their commodities. But I mean, for us, it's the consequences, and we don't really have control over it. Neither are we using the opportunity for exports.
No, we are. I mean, it's not visible, but we are. But one of it is that you see that Nigerians are coming back from abroad. Nigerian British schools are setting up shop in Nigeria. The number of people running out of the country are actually reducing. And there are some changes in behavioral patterns. The dependence on imported commodities is still high, but the reality is that our total imports, if you look at the data, our total imports have reduced. But because your imports have reduced, it means also your raw materials that are being imported have reduced, and activity and productivity is low.
Exactly.
So for now, this is a trying period for us. It's an adjustment period for us. And there's a fiscal adjustment, currency adjustment, and more than anything else, the mental adjustment to accept that we are not as rich as we used to be, and that we have some difficult days ahead.
I guess when the president comes back from Paris and the assessment exercise is over, maybe he would, toe the line of what you have just said. Nigeria is not as rich as we think that we are, and then we'll see some more intentional steps, to help us.
As we used to be, and we think we are, and so adjusting ourselves.
But those days are not so good. But Mr. Rewane, in spite of this, we see Fitch upgrading our outlook as a country. What does this mean?
Well, first of all, B is not investment grade, it's still junk status. 2, from negative outlook to stable outlook is good. Whether we like it or not, we are doing some right things. And more importantly, we are saying the right things, we are doing some of the right things, and we are reducing some of our bad habits of the past. But there's still a lot of bad habits. There's still the overhang of some of the addictions that we have had, economic addictions to the bad practices of the past. It takes time to wean yourself off those addictions, but generally, the fact that we are talking about it, the fact that you said when the president comes back from Paris, he would have carried out as assessment and begin to implement new policies. I'm confident that he will make some changes, and he has to definitely make some changes to the way things are going. The NNPC board was the first step, and that has to be followed by many other changes to make sure that we optimize the use of our people and that we put the right square pegs in square holes and round pegs in round holes.
All right, we do hope so, and we miss our president, and we hope you'll be back soon with those changes that we need. Thank you so much.
Hope is not a strategy. I'm sure he's going to implement some things. Thank you.
Well, hopefully. Thank you so much, Mr. Bismarck Rewane, Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company.
Thank you for having me.
We're talking about the drop in the price of oil and looking another way, the non-oil exports. Yesterday, the Central Bank of Nigeria, as well as the Bankers Committee, they met with operators, export promoters, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria to discuss how Nigeria can actually maximize the window that may be open to us following the trade tariff, which has been initiated by President Donald Trump. And so we put this report together to capture some of the highlights of that meeting.
There'll be an opportunity for us to interact.
It's a town hall meeting to join the discourse in strengthening Nigeria's economy through local manufacturing and non-oil exports. The perspective of discussion here is from the financial services industry players, regulators, including the central bank, academics, entrepreneurs, as well as export promoters. The major presentation captures issues around the United States tariffs, which stands at 14% for Nigeria, the costs and opportunities. The keynote speaker, Dr. Bamidele Ayemibo, shares findings of the trade relations between Nigeria and the United States.
US import is about $2 trillion. African import from the US, US import from Africa just about 40 billion. So roughly about 1%. 1%. So if African trade in terms of export to the US is about 1%, we should be worried about whatever tariff is being given to us. I think we should first of all, that was recommended by the former speaker, to do what we need to do locally, with power, with infrastructure, to be able to enhance our competitiveness before we even begin to negotiate anything.
The manufacturers say they see the opportunities presented by the trade tension. However, staying competitive is difficult for various reasons. We'll bring you a full report later on, but for now we need to direct our DSTV viewers to the NIPR Spokesperson Summit that's happening in the Continental Hotel, Abuja, Federal Capital Territory. But that's just for our DSTV viewers. For other platforms, please stay here with us on Business Morning. And if you're watching on YouTube, just switch to the next window and you will stay here with us on Business Morning. Going on with the program now, we follow from that conversation right there, talking about improving non-oil exports and the opportunities that the trade tension now emphasized around the United States and China may be presenting to the continent, the African continent. Let's speak to an exporter here in Nigeria and find out how they've been faring, since all of this started, and perhaps what else they might need to do better. We have the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Dasun Integrated Farms Limited, Mrs. Bosun Sholari. Mrs. Sholari, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. It's a privilege for me to be joining you here this morning. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. So, in the midst of all that has been happening, how have you been faring as an exporter in Nigeria?
Thank you so much for that question. I think what has just happened about less than 10 days ago. And I can automatically tell, with what has been happening even in the country as well, there's still so much confusion in the air that people are trying to see, how does it affect me? How does it affect you? How will it affect the overall trade? So for now, I don't think anybody will be able to tell you in plain terms what they have experienced.
Okay, but as an exporter generally in Nigeria, how is doing business?
Thank you so much. First, mentioning doing business in Nigeria, it's a difficult one, and I'm sure if you have interviewed a lot of businesses, they will tell you. We have seen in the past 2-3 years many big businesses relocating. We have seen many big businesses going in comatose. We have seen many small businesses being in extinction. But one thing that gladdens my heart is to say that, and I pray that the current Minister of Trade, she's someone I have followed her antecedents from, PEBEC. She's grounded in what she's doing, and I pray they will give her a listening ear. The other ministries and ministers will support her initiative because she listens to people. So, having said that, these crimes in Nigeria is so bad. For instance, Mr. Rewane talked about ministries. We were happy that that report would be worked on. But what are we seeing? Many are coming up. And we make private businesses to fund these people. Because these ministries and the MDAs all look for how to generate revenues from the private sector. And so when you keep demanding, the federal is demanding, the state is demanding, the local government is demanding, it's so funny that you even see the local government coming to your shop to tell you that radio and TV license. Meanwhile, you don't even have any of those ones. And so, is that how we will build this country? I don't know what to say. Much as people are not happy, I think what we're facing this year from Donald Trump, as much as people want to say what they want to say, is a wake-up call for Africa, so that we can all sit up and look inwards and see how to take care of our people. When we don't take care of our businesses so that they can grow, we keep nurturing the big ones. Even the big ones, we all saw what Dangote went through in the last 1 year, when we should be celebrating. I was in Namibia last year. Namibians were happy that Dangote came up, but in Nigeria, we started fighting him. So also the small businesses. Those in MDAs believe that they are doing us a favor, forgetting that it is the money that we're all entitled to, that they're using to pay their salaries. It is the money that we're all entitled to. When I have to trek or I take bus, they go in chauffeur-driven vehicles. The money that is being generated from Nigeria, that all of us should benefit from. So rather than see us as their threat, or they should see us as partners in progress, so that we can all move this country forward. For instance, I was going to tell you, there are so many compliance agencies that those in food, those in cosmetics, whatever you do, you have to meet up with. By the time you put all that and you add logistics cost, We cannot compete anywhere. Now see the tariff. I don't know, I know you will go there. Many of the West African countries, because with what is happening, I can tell you that Africa needs to look back, look inward, and Nigeria need to look into Africa, especially West Africa. But when you look at it, because selling in US now, it's a bit dicey. The logistic cost, what they charge you in Nigeria is not what they charge in West Africa. And you have many of them that will be paying 10%. We are 14%. It's worse off for Cote d'Ivoire, that is 21%. So by the time you put all that, like again, many of us, many small businesses sell on Amazon. Because some of us believe, and we still believe in a Nigeria where we must add value. But you know why people are running for value addition? That they prefer to go on commodities. It's because you have less people to deal with. Most of these compliance issues that we are talking about, they don't have those problems. They don't have to go and pay somebody for television and radio license and co. Somebody coming to check your gutter. Ministry of Environment will collect, this one will collect. Because we have, meanwhile, some of these ministries, as said in those reports, can be merged. And then some are just departments on their own. And then we can low shed this burden on small businesses because they are really killing. If we have accurate data in this country, if people are looking at those data, how many businesses have died? What are we doing to bring them up? Is it loan? Is it how to get loan facility for your business? Is it logistics? Then government cost keeps increasing. We are the ones paying for it. Since January, as much as I wanted to register my products, every 1 naira I see, I'm even going to take a loan to be able to register my tea with NAFDAC because I need over 1 million naira. And isn't it possible, even if we have to pay this cost, isn't it possible for government to look for, are they going to help us structure it so that we pay this thing bit by bit, small, so that when we get there, then we take it as loan, because you can't go to any bank and they give you loan. They stress you that at the end of the day, you even want to say you don't want the loan again. I'm currently going through one. I've had to tell them, please, if you need all my blood for me to get this loan, you better take it. I don't want to lose all my blood. So there's so many things happening. I think government needs to be decisive. You said it's gone. Tariffs are increasing. When we talk
AGOA,
of
what about AGOA? What about AGOA and AFCFTA?
We hope AGOA remains. But the man there, he changes his mind and there's nothing anybody can do about it. Some people are still optimistic about AGOA. I am not. We've had it for several years. We haven't benefited. We're just looking at maybe to be able to benefit, Nigeria for the rest of the time. Then the man is there. He wakes up tomorrow, he says this. He sleeps, he says that. So for me, I'm not optimistic. Then even the AGOA, people are just understanding it. That's why we haven't benefited, because those who actually went for the training, did they really cascade it down? Until last year, many of us didn't understand what to do to be able to benefit from AGOA. But now it's very free and clear that we can, but this man wakes up. So there's so many issues surrounding, even when we talk of AFCFTA, logistics is a problem. It's easier to move things to UK, to move things to US and Europe. It's more cheaper than to move it to the southern part of Africa, because of the issues surrounding everything. We had some years back that Nigeria is working on with Sea-Link on sea freight. Again, we're not hearing anything. But the last I heard about it last year is that they are trying to dredge. And I told somebody, I said, instead of trying to dredge River Niger or River Benue, sorry, there's a coastal line that is still free. Can't we start that from there? So that when we finish dredging the other one, we can then link them together. But you see, bureaucracy, Nigeria, because of the too many ministries, every ministry is fighting for their own. And then we're not seeing the holistic picture of how we can help the country. Make ourselves one so that things can move. It's honestly, it's a lot of problems. And government, like Mr. Rewane said, I hope the president comes with all the people who have gone to France, because all those monies that we're spending, some people have to go definitely, but with the so much jamboree like a called. It's better to put that money in here and see how we can help our businesses export. Because with the oil that there today, because it's a commodity, somebody wakes up or some countries wake up tomorrow and they determine the fate of those who use it. And that's the price of commodities everywhere. It can be very volatile. But when we engage in, processed goods, that is, you can determine your price. You can say, but of course you still have to remain competitive. But unfortunately, logistics in Nigeria has made people come up with losses in export business.
So I guess you're talking about adding value when you say not just commodities,
yes,
but
adding value.
Adding value
yes,
to our raw
value.
materials actually.
Yes, it become processed. Yes, it become processed goods. Adding value. That's where we can make it more. Because for the commodities, maybe ginger now that even has an issue already. You take ginger, if you don't take it there in refrigerated containers and cocoa, by the time it gets there, they tell you the thing is bad because they don't even want to pay you. Most of the things you carry, they're always having issues because no matter the test you do, the analysis you do here, if the freight system, the logistics system is not smooth and fast, it may give it issues. And that's why you will hear rejects. The rejects are mostly from commodities. But when we sit down, although that's where compliance comes in, but let the compliance again not be an albatross to the positive side that we're looking for. Is there a way we can work on it so that by the time we now get this global, then we've been talking in Africa, let there be a standardized compliance system where if I certify, if I can use that in Nigeria, then I should be able to carry my goods. For instance, if you have HACCP, hazard analysis and critical control points for food, and then maybe some, and with FDA, you can sell anywhere in America. But if I have that one, I may not be able to sell in any of the African countries because they want me to get their own standard. Like Nigeria too, where it says that people get NAFDAC and some. So it's better we all look for how to get a unified standard so that trade becomes easier. There should be trade facilitation, not trade barriers.
All right, Ms. you express a level of confidence in the relatively new minister, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole.
100%.
Okay, 100%. But, seeing her, having confidence in her in the Nigerian context now, and seeing her do what you think, I mean, you've noted a whole lot of things, which I believe she is not new to because she's been heading the ease of doing business for a long time. So do you think that now that she's there, all of these things will automatically, be solved? Or do you think there are processes that must be followed if these issues you have listed could or would be solved?
Exactly, there are processes. And the processes cut across different MDAs. So as a minister, she can only assert so much in her own ministry. The other ones will have to be lobbying, taking it to the president. The president is busy. He's overseeing a lot of things. And that's why I said, I hope and I pray that the other agencies will cooperate. She has seen so many things they are not seeing. But unfortunately, the way we are in Nigeria, everybody is trying to keep their side. Everybody is trying to keep their side. My ministry, because then everybody is a revenue generating agency. So the more I make things difficult, we think the more we will make money for our ministries. But it is when we fasten things, make it easy, that we can trade. So the confidence of 100% I have in her is in her ability that she knows what to do. She knows the issues. She knows where to take it to. But whether those other ones will cooperate is now where the problem arises and where the president should just stay and resolve so that when Nigeria goes into export business full-fledged, like this AFCFTA now, I still believe that if we do the right things, then Nigeria will be able to benefit, because with these issues in America and co, if the tariff makes us not competitive enough, then we should look back into Africa.
But Mrs. Sholari, you know,
still a problem.
Mrs. Sholari, so you have 100% confidence in the minister, but you hope that, you know, the other ministries and related agencies. But what we know is that she's the minister, so she has to find a way, because at the end of the day, if things don't work out in Nigeria, we call President Bola Tinubu. We don't say, oh, it's this person. So I guess it is her responsibility to find a way to make these things work. Because at the end of the day, if we want to rate non-oil exports in the country, we're going to say, oh, the minister did well, or the minister did not do well. You know, so I guess it is her responsibility.
But honestly, let me ask you this one. When we're talking about logistics, it has to do with air. I mean, it has to do with the whole freighting system, land, sea, air. Will she be able to say, okay, the problem we have with aviation industry, will she be able to resolve? It is through diplomacy, dialogue, and then the exporters talking and talking and talking like we've been talking. But unfortunately, like you said, if things don't work, we hang it on somebody's doorstep, forgetting that if the issues in the port that they've been resolving for some time now, like before 1 month, your ship will not get to the port, which is now a thing of the past. If this was the era, and then we come out and say it's the minister, is that the minister?
All right, well, questions to answer.
Or the road, somebody coming from Kano, and then he's coming by road. They will lay the vehicle somewhere on the road. The goods does not get here. The person has, so many things have gone wrong, and he is not getting to Lagos. The ginger gets spoiled on the way, so the tomato gets rotten on the way, and so many things. With bad road, is she the one? No.
All right, Bishola, well, I guess Onizi is the head that wears the crown. So if you have an office, you have a lot of things to take care of. Thank you so much for sharing your views with us this morning. Chief Executive Officer and founder of Daso Integrated Farms Limited, Mrs. Bosun Sholari.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure coming on air with you. Thank you.
Thank you too. Let's take a break. When we come back, we head to the global space. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Watching Business Morning on Channels Television. From the global space now, Japan's Fair Trade Commission has ordered Alphabet Incorporated, that's Google, to stop alleged abuse of its market power over local smartphone manufacturers just ahead of high-stakes trade negotiations with the United States this week. The Tuesday order reiterates the FTC's earlier finding that the U.S. tech giant took advantage of its position as a provider of Google Play app ecosystem. That's the only viable alternative to the iPhone's App Store. And Google is improperly forcing local phone makers to prioritize its apps and services on their devices, according to the regulator. In Sweden, the country has announced spending plans aimed at stimulating the sluggish economy as the global trade war muddies the outlook for the biggest Nordic country. The spring budget, totaling 11.5 billion kronor, that's about $1.2 billion, includes tax relief for households, according to a statement posted by the government website on Tuesday. From there to Hong Kong, where the airport authority is seeking a syndicated loan of about 20 billion Hong Kong currency. That's about $2.6 billion. And they say that this is coming months after completing one of the largest bond offerings by a local issuer. The Hong Kong government statutory body has sent a request for proposals to banks in recent days for the loan, and they're asking to discuss the matter privately, and the borrowing is likely to be in a form of revolving credit facility and carry a 5-year tenure to it. In India, wholesale inflation eased to a 4-month low in March as food prices rose at a lower pace. This is according to government data. Wholesale inflation, a proxy for producer prices, fell to 2.05% year-on-year from 2.38 in February and was lower than the 2.5 that was projected by economists. Wholesale food prices rose slowly at 4.66% in March against 5.94% in February. Vegetable prices fell 15.88 compared to 5.80 drop in the prior month. Food prices in the wholesale market have eased in recent months as vegetable output improved. Last week, the Reserve Bank of India cut its key repo rate for a second consecutive time this year, while also lowering India's growth forecast for the current year to 6.5. The RBI, however, warns that lingering global market uncertainties and the recurrence of adverse weather-related supply disruptions pose upside risks to the inflation trajectory. India's weather office is set to forecast this year's monsoon later today, followed by March retail inflation that's also set to be announced. In the United Kingdom, unemployment rate remained unchanged in February as widely expected, according to data that was released today. But wages growth continued to be an issue for the Bank of England as it attempts to guide UK economy through difficult waters. According to the Office for National Statistics, the jobless rate remained at 4.4% in the 3 months to February, and that's unchanged from the prior release as had been expected. And China will trade with more friends and become a stronger magnet for investment. This is a release by the Foreign Ministry. Facing external uncertainties, China says that they will stay committed to joining hands rather than throwing punches. That's what they shared in a press briefing when asked about China International Consumer Products Expo that's being held in southern China this week. South Korea has announced a support package of 33 trillion won, that's about $23.25 billion, for its vital semiconductor industry as heightened uncertainty over U.S. tariffs threaten domestic companies. This comes after U.S. President Donald Trump reportedly said he would be announcing the tariff rate on imported semiconductors soon after exempting them from his steep reciprocal tariffs last week, Friday. And talking about the moves by U.S. President, let's find out how Americans are feeling the pinch or enjoying some flourishing fruits from it. And we have our correspondent in Washington, Maria Bird. Hi, Maria. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
So I wonder how you feel as an American when you see your president able to move the world one way or the other. You must be proud to be an American, Maria.
Well, it's an interesting time to be an American, to be quite honest. This is new for us to see this type of trade wars back and forth and to see all the changes that are happening and impacting the entire globe. Obviously, this is definitely new policies. So Americans are getting adjusted. Not quite sure all of Americans really quite understand, and obviously, as you mentioned, how it impacts our pockets. I think that's the greatest concern. I think that Americans are really looking to see. It's been quite some time now that we've been seeing high rates of inflation, that we've been seeing a pinch financially. So many Americans are just looking for some relief.
Yeah, you talked about how it's affecting your pockets. I guess President Trump is considering that. That's why he brought that relief, the 90-day pause, and now the relief for tech imports. I guess that will also help consumers and maybe improve the dollar index a bit.
Yes, and I think that's what Americans are hopeful for. They're hopeful for the long-term gains. They're hopeful that even though right now there's not immediate relief, that there will be long-term relief, and that hopefully this will obviously in some way have a positive impact across the globe economically, because the U.S. has been such a strong partner globally as it relates to trade relations over the past few years. This has been something that's been happening really since the Clinton administration. So we've had long-standing trade relationships and really allowing business, as you know, with automobiles, the parts are made all across the world. And even though it could be a U.S.-made car, there are parts that are sent back and forth. It's a pretty complex chain of how an automobile in the U.S., even a U.S.-made automobile, is actually actually all the parts and how they all come together and where they come from. So I think this is new territory for Americans, but obviously very hopeful, most importantly, that one, we get to see an increase in the availability of jobs. We get to see increases in living wages. And obviously, at the end of the day, being able to see that people are able to sustain and live a life that doesn't have them pinching and wondering if they can afford the eggs the next day.
So, I mean, there's also, on the other hand, that seems to have come now, the president's perspective dealing with migrants. We don't hear a lot about that because when you check, as you said, even if a car is a US-made car, a lot of the parts are being made outside the country. China, on top of that, because of cheap labor. So those migrants who are supposed to be, I mean, relatively cheap labor in the US, are they safe to work now? Has the president gotten his eyes off them? Or is that dealing with the migrants still a big one there?
Well, as we know, ICE has been and definitely ramped up since this administration, and ICE is the organization that does most of the deportations for those who are illegally in the U.S. We know there's a system in place, electronic system, people to input their names if they are here illegally or if they don't have the appropriate documentation. So we're still seeing a widespread number of individuals that are being sent back to their originating countries if they don't have the proper documentation to be here in the United States. So it's interesting to bring up the question around migrants. I think that one of the concerns, though, is that many Americans are still looking for employment, and that's part of why he's looking to bring manufacturing back. So we'll see, because there are obviously some thoughts around, to your point, around the labor force and how much the those individuals who are here that have migrated to the U.S., how much they add to the labor force.
Yeah, well, okay, fair enough. You want your people to be employed, but I think a bigger worry for the world now is we don't know what side of the bed President Trump will wake up on and what will, be the result of the day. Just the uncertainty, I think, is what worries global economists even more.
Yes, I think, as we know, just yesterday, there were tariff exemptions put in place. There's expectations there'll be more tariff exemptions. We know that the iPhone is one of the most bought and sought after electronic devices in the United States. And to think that iPhones and the chips that are used would have been a 25% increase, I think that would have had a major impact. Apple has obviously one of the largest companies in the United States, one of the companies that obviously has somewhat of an impact and likely is a part of the president's business roundtable discussions. And so they probably were very influential in trying to address that. We know there's automobile parts as well. As we've noted, that the president stated that it will take time for automobile companies to build up their factories to be able to have all the parts made. So he will be reducing and putting some exemptions placed there as well. So I think that the bigger picture, I think once he realizes there could be, and obviously after advocacy and individuals come forth to provide him with additional insights into how the impact of the tariffs are having on the American people and obviously American companies, I think that's when we're seeing that he could make a shift. And I think we expected, and I think he intended to put some of these tariffs in place as we've seen major world leaders come to the table to try to renegotiate it. We've seen several of those renegotiations happen. So I think that was part of the plan and the strategy to be able to find a way to, from his standpoint, create fair and free trade across the United States.
Yeah, but I think President Trump is still waiting for China's negotiation. I think that's the big one for him. But thank you so much, Maria, for waking up early and joining the program. Appreciate that. All right, so that's it on the program. But we have to tell you that yesterday the NGX, Nigeria stock market, closed in the negative 0.03%, still hovering around 104,065 trillion for the market cap. Is still a negative breath in the market right there. Profit taking is still going on. We'll give you updates on that and a whole lot more intraday numbers at 1 p.m. That'll be during Business Incorporated. Join me then. I'll be back in a couple of hours. See you.